And we traveled together for a couple of years, and Jesus Christ, how we both came out of that alive is a whole different story for a whole different day. But when you come in and you're looking at the WCW locker room, I mean, or the work that was being done, because there was some good work there by just a few people.
Right.
By and large, it wasn't so great, or certainly, and I'm not saying to cast any stones because I wasn't a textbook badass worker by any stretch. I was a pretty decent mechanic, but you're coming from very technical wrestling background.
People forget, me and Chris Benoit came at the same time.
Really?
Yes, we came together, same month, right? We get there, Bill Watts has sent all, with the exception of you, Ricky Steamboat and Brian, he sent everybody else that was good. So I get there, obviously gravitate towards you and Brian and Ricky, right? Because, these are our kind of people.
Yeah.
But Chris and me were incredibly miffed when we saw the talent.
Right, let down. Kind of surprised that it was that low.
But obviously there was incredible quality. I mean, we were blown away with you and Brian. And I'd been watching you and Brian on ITV, on the WCW before I came. I remember watching, there was like a series of matches with Brad Armstrong and a partner. But I knew all about Brad Armstrong.
Yeah.
But we weren't watching the partner, we were watching you three. I was watching you three going, my God, these fellas can go, And I remember there used to be a sports announcer in England, and he would introduce the matches in between. And he went off on a thing about putting you fellas over once, which wasn't. Does anybody watch how brilliant these? And he mentioned you three in particular. I've never seen anything, and I was like, wow, that's because he's one of them that just does his job, doesn't need to do this, but went off about how much effort and everything, and the physicality of what you were doing. But then there's these other fellas that, I've got to say their names right, though, because it's like Bagwell and Van Hammer and these and Mark Marrow and them kind of people, and they're all talking about getting egg whites and finding tanning beds and stuff, right? Yeah. And we're looking and oh dear, this is and just wasn't the kind of wrestling that we wanted to do. Then straight away, when I was brought in, I was told, Bill Watts told me, he said, I don't want you to be a heel or a baby face. I want you to be one of them straight up British wrestlers.
Right.
That does all the... No problem, that's what I do. Okay, go out and do it in 3 minutes. That doesn't work.
Right.
I was dying to death on TV.
Yeah.
Absolutely dying to death, right? Because...
Now, why did they tell you to go out and do it in 3 minutes?
Well, that's all I had, right? That's what you had to... You'd go out... Go out, yeah, and in the booking thing, go out and have a 3-minute match. I'd never done anything less than 5 rounds or something. I was like, what? It's 3 minutes and you get... What's your finishing move? I said, what? I said, finishing move? I said, I don't have one. So just get whatever form we need for the, because I used to do a long match. You just get several different falls, and nobody had a finish. The only person who had a finish in Europe was Finlay. Did the pile driver. That was it. Nobody had a finish. You just did whatever you did.
Yeah,
you had your certain falls that you did, and got.
So what happened?
So I go out with the fella, and I did a side suplex something, but I'm trying to do wrestling stuff to him. He was a good fella, the fella I was on with, but he didn't know my stuff. So I'm trying to do... Well, I'm moving him into certain positions. I went to go behind him and put him in a cravat, right?
Yeah.
And as soon as my hands had gone round his head, he's took a bump like I'm going to snap my head. Oh! So I'm looking at him on the floor, and he's like... Oh, and truly felt like, everybody's going to think I'm terrible. The only thing that saved me was straight away, and you were there, I got put on all the house shows. Well, we were on what they called the B crew, right?
Yeah.
I don't even remember what a crew that was, but it was you and Brian against Ricky and Shane, and then it was Scorpio was on there. Then there was me and Chris, and a lot of times me and Chris were wrestling each other, which we were doing stuff that people were like, and seeing that we could do all this stuff, or whoever you were wrestling, I'd have as long as I needed.
Right.
I could have, me and Dustin wrestled a lot, but it was just you could do 15, 20 minutes, nobody ever told you to put any time up. So it was just good stuff. And so luckily those reports were getting back to the people, well, this fella can do some stuff, because if you'd have seen me on TV, it was awful. And I still hadn't really, I've been practicing talking for years, but I still hadn't found my voice in the talking thing. And Tony Schiavone helped me with that by letting me go down there on my days off and just practice and practice and practice.
Really?
Oh, yeah.
Tony Schiavone
did that for me. Yeah, he saved me. He just saw me one day. He said, come down on the Wednesday. We used to have Wednesday off, and I used to go down to CNN Centre, and he set up a camera for me. And I'd be in there all day long just cutting promos.
Really?
Yeah, and so all of that was coming together. Well, then I had the idea. I said, well, the only way I can do this wrestling stuff is if I'm a villain, right? And I'd never really been that much of a villain.
Right.
I'd been a wrestling villain in certain places, but I'd never been a character villain.
Right.
So, well, if I do that, I can put people in and out of things and make them look good, and then I can sell. And something like my big hero, Pete Roberts and Cyanide Sid Cooper.
Right.
Cyanide Sid was the best comedic character villain, and at the same time would have you laughing at him and then just wanting to kill him, and just a heat getting incredibly. There's a match you should watch it. Cyanide Sid against Kung Fu. He was another from an Irish guy that trained with Finley's dad. Just one of them kinds that have you laughing and screaming, and so I thought, well, I could do some of his stuff and do the wrestling stuff and mix it all together. And so I got the idea out to Bill Dundee. I said, look, I'd be better off doing this, because this wrestling, I can't wrestle as not being a baby. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
You can only do it when you're leading somebody.
Right.
So, and in this country at the time, villains led the match. That was the way it was, right? Which should have been.
Right.
Should have been. And so it was, Dundee did that. Eventually, about 2 months later, Dusty came up to me and said, I've got a great idea for you. We're going to make you Lord Stephen Regal. And I said, thank you very much. And originally, it should have been Larry Zbyszko with me. That was Dusty's original idea, so I'm going to put, because Larry Zbyszko's real name is Whistler.
Right.
And for some reason, Dusty thought that we'd have Lawrence Whistler and Lord Stephen. And then I think Bill was in the office, and he thought, well, this will be a good gig for me. So that's how we started.
Together.
It was a magic thing, yeah. It was brilliant. I mean, I turned 25 in the May of that year, and it was just incredible to get started. And straight away, I'm like wrestling, and you'd just gone through it all, but I'm wrestling Steamboat and Arn and Terry Taylor, because all them fellas came back then. So I had all the best of the best to wrestle all the time.
Like working with Ricky Steamboat, because Steamboat can work with anybody, anywhere, anytime. But the European style is it's different.
It wasn't with them. It wasn't with any of them fellas because they
can work their ass off.
They just don't understand the mechanics of. They understand that this is all the same. It doesn't matter where you go in the world. If people understand the way the body moves, then you can do anything with anybody.
Agreed. But you brought up Brad Armstrong, and everybody knows Brad Armstrong passed away about a year or so ago. God rest his soul. One of the baddest workers that there ever was. He was a guy. I don't care if he was in Europe, he was in Mexico, he was in Japan, United States.
Well, he did. He came to Germany. And
he was one of those guys. He could work his ass off at any style. But not everybody can just get in there with a cat like you and be.
As long as your body just moves around, you can do it. And that's what it was. That was the key to it. Anybody that wasn't just taught in one way and just if you just understood the mechanics of a body, you can do it. If I turn your arm that way, you go that way. If I move your head that way, you go that way. That's what it is. Yeah. And it's easily done, right?
How did you like working with Steamboat?
Just brilliant. Just the best. It was such and because you would certainly put your time in, right? You would go out there, and it was just as long as you wanted to go, and non-stop.
The thing I liked, one of the biggest things I liked about Steamboat was, if you just did something, he had a response for it. You grab a headlock, he's going to try to top wrist or whatever. He's going to do something to counter. Yeah. And you're not talking. You're just working.
And that's the way I always did everything.
Yeah, but some people, you got to pay by numbers. No, not with those guys.
Well, I still, that's not me, and I was never taught that way. None of them people were taught by numbers. None of them.
Well,
and that was why you look at that. All those fellas they're the ones that went to Japan. They're the ones that went, because at one time you got to Japan, you were in separate dressing rooms and all that kind of stuff. So it was just understanding the body mechanics of understanding the basic ideas of this job. Yeah. And when you can do that, you can go anywhere and wrestle anybody.
And truly being a give and take situation, because it's going to go back and forth.
Is it what people want to see nowadays? Probably not, to a degree.
I don't know what people want to see right now.
Well, with the right people, if you can go out there.
I got to ask you this. We're talking about working, and Steamboat, Arn Anderson, those cats and top guys. And like you said, To your point, two guys not to work, you can have a match. You and me went out there, European style. Me, I'm not a classic worker. I'm more of a brawler. Now, we could brawl like a sunbuck, though.
Yeah, we used to brawl, yeah.
But we had
great chemistry as a tag team.
Yeah, we always had fun.
No, but as a tag team, I filled in for Brian.
Yeah, we had a great time.
Yeah, me and you, it seemed to work really well because it was so... Like me doing my thing and you doing your thing, and like
I was a little bit more of a technician. I would say I wouldn't call myself.
But you were a
technician.
speed guy, you do the stuff that I wouldn't like. And we just fit together perfectly.
It worked out
really good. Yeah.
What about the dang match that happened? Man, we had moved on. I guess I had left to go to WWF at the time, and you were back